Can you imagine growing up hearing thrilling tales of your grandpa's wartime heroics, only to discover decades later that those weren't just war stories at all? They were real, clandestine spy missions. That's my life. I found out my grandpa, the man who taught me how to fish and tie my shoes, was a genuine secret agent. And let me tell you, the truth was far stranger and more dangerous than any fiction I could have ever imagined. Was I completely blindsided by this revelation? Absolutely. And honestly, part of me wonders if I should have seen the signs all along. Tell me if your quiet, unassuming grandparent suddenly turned out to be James Bond. Would you be shocked, or would you say, "Aha, I knew it"? My grandpa, Arthur, was always a man of few words, but when he did speak, especially about his time during what he vaguely called the Big War, everyone listened. He'd sit in his old armchair, pipe smoke curling around his head, and recount these incredible, almost cinematic stories. He spoke of daring escapes, clever disguises, and outsmarting the enemy. He never used specific names or locations, always keeping things a little fuzzy, saying it was classified. Even all these years later, we all just chuckled and called him our very own Indiana Jones. Grandma, bless her heart, would just smile knowingly and say, "Oh, Arthur, you and your imagination." I ate it all up, every single story. My favorite was about how he once had to impersonate a German officer to infiltrate a stronghold, using only his wits and a hastily learned accent. He made it sound like a grand adventure, full of close calls and triumphant moments, always emphasizing how crucial it was to think on your feet. These tales shaped my childhood, fueling my imagination and instilling in me a deep respect for his supposed bravery. Growing up in a small, sleepy town, Grandpa Arthur was a pillar of the community. He was a retired history teacher, always impeccably dressed, and had a quiet dignity about him. He smelled of old books and pipe tobacco, and his hands, though gnarled with age, were surprisingly strong. He taught me how to whittle wood, identify constellations, and, most importantly, how to keep a secret. He'd often say, "Some things are best left unsaid, son. A true gentleman knows when to keep his own counsel." I always thought he was referring to gossip or family squabbles, never dreaming he was talking about espionage. My grandmother, Eleanor, was the complete opposite: vivacious, chatty, and always baking something delicious. She doted on Grandpa, but there was always a playful exasperation in her voice whenever he started on his war stories. She'd roll her eyes good-naturedly, but I now realize there was a deeper layer to her reactions, a quiet understanding, perhaps even a shared secret. My parents, of course, believed Grandpa's stories were just that, stories. Exaggerated tales from a man who had seen some difficult things and embellished them for his grandchildren's entertainment. They never actively dismissed them, but their polite nods and knowing glances communicated their skepticism clearly enough. I, however, was a true believer. I'd spend hours in the library devouring books on World War II, trying to find any obscure details that might corroborate Grandpa's incredible feats. Of course, I never found anything concrete, which only fueled my belief that his missions were so top secret they wouldn't even be in history books. I even tried to get him to open up more, to give me names, dates, places. He'd just chuckle, pat my head, and say, "Some doors are best left unopened, my boy. The past is a tricky thing." Life went on, and I grew up, eventually moving away for college and then for my career. Grandpa Arthur and Grandma Eleanor remained in their little house, a comforting constant in my ever-changing world. I'd visit whenever I could, and he'd still tell his stories, though less frequently. They became more reflective, tinged with a melancholic wisdom that I only now truly understand. He'd speak of the burdens of secrecy, the weight of responsibility, and the sacrifices made. I remember one specific conversation, a few years before he passed, where he looked at me with an unusual intensity and said, "Remember, Mark, appearances can be deceiving. The quietest person often carries the loudest history." I brushed it off then, thinking he was just being philosophical. Oh, how wrong I was! The revelation came after Grandpa Arthur passed away peacefully in his sleep at the ripe old age of 92. It was a sad time, but also a celebration of a life well lived. As we were going through his belongings, sorting out what to keep and what to donate, we stumbled upon an old, dusty wooden chest in the attic. It was tucked away in a dark corner, almost as if it didn't want to be found. Inside, among old photographs and trinkets, there was a false bottom. And beneath that was a treasure trove of secrets. Inside the hidden compartment, there wasn't gold or jewels, but a collection of meticulously kept journals, coded messages, old passports with different names and faces that were unmistakably Grandpa Arthur's, and an array of bizarre, almost theatrical disguises. There were also several medals, not the kind you'd get for bravery in open combat, but discreet, strangely shaped ones, some with foreign inscriptions. And then there was the letter. It was addressed to me in his familiar, elegant handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened the letter. It began by saying he knew I would be the one to find it, that I had always been the most curious and observant. He explained that his war stories were indeed true, every single one of them, and many more he hadn't shared. He was a deep cover operative working for a clandestine intelligence agency during and after the war, tasked with missions far beyond the front lines. He detailed some of his actual operations, the high stakes, the constant danger, the double lives he had to lead. The German officer's story, true, the elaborate disguises, essential tools of his trade, the classified nature of his memories. Very real. He spoke of the emotional toll it took, the loneliness of living a lie, even to his own family. He confessed that Grandma Elinor had known some, but not all, of his secrets. She was his confidante, his anchor, the one person he could partially unburden himself to. The letter also contained a stark warning. He had left certain encrypted files and a contact number, should I ever feel compelled to pursue the truth further, but he strongly advised against it. He warned that some secrets were best left buried, that knowing too much could put me and my family in danger. He ended the letter with a poignant apology for the deception, but a fierce pride in his service, saying he had done what was necessary for his country. So that's the situation I was in, reading this letter, holding these artifacts, realizing my entire perception of my beloved grandpa, and indeed my family history, was a carefully constructed facade. I had to make a choice. Do I follow his warning and let the sleeping dogs lie, respecting his sacrifice and his desire for peace in his final years? Or do I dive headfirst into this rabbit hole, unraveling the mysteries he left behind, potentially uncovering more truths that could shake my world even further, and perhaps even put me in harm's way? Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have sought out the truth or let the past remain a secret? I spent days, weeks, agonizing over it. The warning in his letter echoed in my mind. Some doors are best left unopened. But the pull of the truth, the sheer magnitude of what he had done, was overwhelming. My grandpa, a spy, it was like something out of a movie. I remembered his advice about thinking on your feet, about appearances being deceiving. And I knew, deep down, he was preparing me for this. He wanted me to know, eventually. The letter was an invitation, not just a confession. I decided to pursue it, cautiously. I didn't immediately call the number he left. Instead, I started with the journals. They were a fascinating, terrifying read. Page after page of coded entries, sketches of gadgets, cryptic observations about targets, and chilling accounts of close calls. His handwriting, which I had always associated with gentle encouragement and neatly written lessons, now took on a new, urgent significance. I pieced together fragments of operations, discovering that his famous German officer's story was actually a critical mission to extract a defector from a heavily guarded facility. The disguises weren't just for fun, they were crucial for survival. He had been a master of espionage, a phantom moving through the shadows of history. One particularly harrowing entry described a mission in the late 1950s, long after the war supposedly ended for him. He was tracking a rogue agent who had stolen vital intelligence. The details were sparse, but the emotional intensity of his writing was palpable. He spoke of betrayal, of having to make impossible choices, of the lines blurring between right and wrong. It was clear this wasn't just a job for him. It was a fundamental part of his identity. He had been living a double life for decades, a quiet suburban grandfather by day, a ghost of his past lurking beneath the surface. I eventually gathered enough courage to decrypt some of the files he left, using a cipher he subtly hinted at in one of his earlier, more innocent stories. What I found was a treasure trove of declassified documents, mission reports, and even old photographs. One photo, in particular, stopped me cold. It was Grandpa Arthur, much younger, standing next to a group of serious-looking individuals. One of them, a stern-faced woman with piercing eyes, was Grandma Eleanor. Not the gentle, baking grandma I knew, but a younger, sharper version, dressed in a sensible but formidable suit. She was no mere confidante, she was part of it. She was in on his secrets, perhaps even an agent herself, or at the very least, a highly skilled support operative. Her knowing smiles, her playful exasperation, it all made sense now. She wasn't just humoring him, she was protecting his cover, and perhaps her own. I still haven't called the number he left. The files contain enough to occupy my mind for a lifetime, and the weight of this secret, now shared with me, is immense. I understand his warning now, the danger that comes with knowledge. The world hasn't stopped being a complex and dangerous place, and the ripples of his past still exist. I've told no one else in my family, not even my parents. They would never believe me, and I wouldn't know how to begin explaining it without sounding completely mad. This secret, this incredible legacy, is mine to carry. Learning about Grandpa Arthur's true life has changed everything for me. It's given me a new appreciation for the quiet heroes, for the people who serve in the shadows, making sacrifices most of us will never comprehend. It's also made me realize that everyone carries a hidden history, and the most ordinary-looking person might be the most extraordinary. I look at old photographs of him now, and I see not just my grandfather, but a man who lived 1,000 lives, a legend disguised as a history teacher. His stories, once innocent bedtime tales, are now thrilling, dangerous realities, and in a strange way, I feel closer to him than ever before. So, that's my incredible, unbelievable truth. My Grandpa Arthur wasn't just a war hero in his imagination. He was a genuine spy, living a double life for decades, and he entrusted me with his ultimate secret. It's a heavy burden, but an incredible privilege. Like this video, if you were on my side, and would have also sought the truth. Subscribe for more stories like this, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What do you think I should do with this knowledge? Should I ever tell anyone else? I'll see you all in the next story.